Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. You guys know who I am. I'm Dr. Angela Butts-Chester, and you know what I like to do on my show. Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about my guest. I'll be spending time today with Michael Pugh, President and CEO of the Local Initiatives Support Corporation, LISC. This is a part of our Black History series, Still We Rise, Still We Lead. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea because we are about to get started. Hello, Michael. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Dr. Angela, thank you so much for inviting me. Happy to be here today.
Absolutely. Welcome, welcome. Now, I realize that I may be introducing you to some new listeners out there. So, my very first question is tell us just a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. So perhaps one of the most significant things that I often start off with is that I'm a native of Detroit, Michigan. I spent my childhood there, and it was a place where I had an opportunity to cut my teeth in terms of the start of my career in financial services. A wonderful time and era growing up where community the essence of community and connection truly existed, and you could see it even in big cities like Detroit, Michigan. And after having spent college years and cutting my teeth in my career there, had an incredible opportunity to move around a bit, ultimately leading me to New York, this incredible mosaic that, frankly, offers you the diversity that comes with the world all in one place. A 30-year professional in financial services that then ultimately was attracted to Local Initiatives Support Corporation, LISC, to come on board as their CEO and help lead the charge with our important work centered on quality, affordable housing for all,
Mhm.
along with economic development. So that's kind of my Reader's Digest version of who I am and where I've been.
I love it. I love it. Well, as you said, you grew up in Detroit and you expected to follow a career in healthcare, if I understand correctly. Looking back, were there any early experiences that really helped shape your understanding of care and responsibility today?
And thank you for asking. Oh, here's what I would tell you. I come from a family of healthcare providers. And what I often saw in my childhood rearing is the conversations at the dinner table were heavily centered on patient care. And if you can imagine those conversations, in many cases, the discussion was about how to properly care for someone and get them back to a state that they were healthy and whole and able to be independent. Those conversations stuck with me, and I believed wholeheartedly that I too would have a career in healthcare. In fact, my undergrad education from Eastern Michigan University is in healthcare administration. What I learned throughout the course of initially starting in that field, I did a bit of geriatrics, physical therapy. I was a physical therapist assistant for a period of time. And in the state of Michigan, you had to work for a certain number of hours under a licensed physical therapist and get a certification before you could be a physical therapist assistant. The geriatrics PT created this incredible opportunity for me to play a role in being the highlight of many of our elderly patients that were living in nursing homes, the highlight of their day. And so we helped them to be able to get active and to feel good about the day. But the part that was somewhat tough for me as a young man in my very early 20s while putting myself through college and having this role was grappling with the realities of life and seeing that in some cases I'd go home and I'd come back and my patients had expired. Well, my family
Mhm.
members didn't talk about that part oftentimes at the table, but what
Mhm.
resonated and stuck with me is the ability to create care solutions to help people get back to that state of independence. And because that always was the paradigm that stuck with me, I understood that when I transitioned into a role in financial services, I started my career as a part-time teller at a bank. If you understand the flow of money, and you can use that information in a meaningful way to help yourself and others, you can also then provide a form of care that ultimately leads to independence. And so I developed this attraction for wanting to learn more about financial services and how it works because of the paradigm and the family model that we saw, certainly saw, which was to focus on care solutions that ultimately lead to independence.
Now, if we fast forward just a bit, you have spent more than 30 years in community lending and development. What has remained consistent in your leadership philosophy, even as your role has gotten larger? We jump one more time, and that includes you have served as president and CEO of Carver Federal Savings Bank. It is the nation's largest publicly traded African American operated bank. How did you manage to stay authentic to who you are, as well as being a leader others are able to look up to and model?
Yeah, yeah. I would say that eh, for anyone that is interested in continuing to challenge themselves to grow, your view about leadership changes over time as you become more centered on who you are and aligned with your purpose. At this stage in my journey, it is very clear that um, my purpose is, and my opportunity here in this world is to take the knowledge, to take the things, the blessings that I've been able to receive and share them in a meaningful way. And so, from a
Mhm.
leadership standpoint, I think about it from three critical areas of my life. The first one is respect, myself and others, and how I lead and show up, demonstrating that. The second one is forgiveness, the ability to have a level of grace that allows myself to be forgiving of any mistake that I may make, as well as others. And then that third one is to have a purpose-driven confidence. There is that thin line between arrogance and what I would say confidence. And the way
Mhm.
you really help to ensure that the line is never crossed is to ensure that your confidence is always grounded on purpose. And so I'm very clear at this stage in my life that through those three things, respect, forgiveness, and purpose-driven confidence, I have an incredible opportunity to share and learn from others, and that ability to connect with people on the with those three things as my foundation, I believe ultimately are what makes it's the making of me as a leader today. I don't know that 10, 15 years ago I would have seen the world and my journey that way. I would have perhaps been thinking much more about, am I achieving metrics that are tied to the
Mhm.
success of my role? Am I accumulating things that the world would then define as successful? Am I caring for my family? And I think you can do all of those things. You can live a life of abundance, but without purpose, those things really are quite superficial and ultimately meaningless.
Mm. Mhm. I could not agree with you more. Well, it is time for us to take a very short break, but before we do, if someone wants to reach out to you or follow you on socials, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, I would encourage them to go to LISC.org. That's LISC.org. It's an incredible way to find out so much more about who we are, what we do, and why it matters. It's an opportunity to link to our socials as well.
Hmm. Alrighty, everyone, you know where you can visit. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Michael Pugh, President and CEO of the Local Initiatives Support Corporation, LISC. Let's jump back into our conversation. Now, I love what the corporation is doing. If I understand correctly, LISC has invested 35 billion, and yes, that is with a B, into communities since 1979 in urban and rural communities across the US, Puerto Rico, resulting in over 530,000 affordable homes and apartments. And not to mention 83 million square feet of commercial retail and community space. That's nothing to sneeze at. When you think about the impact of that scale, how do you keep the work that you do human? And um, how does it keep you motivated personally?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the way I keep the work human is to ensure that we as a team of colleagues, there's over 500 of us across the United States, Puerto Rico, and Guam. We remember that on the other side of this work, there are human beings, there are lives that are counting on us. They may never know our name, may never remember our faces, but it is the sweat equity, it is our passion for ensuring that every American resident has an opportunity for quality, affordable housing. And with that housing, we then build sustainable communities. And the way that we do that is that we think about what's needed after housing exists. And our programs range from charter school financing to safety and justice initiatives that ultimately help to support at-risk youth and ensure that they have safe places for community to be educated and to take on recreation. We think about health and wellness initiatives and some of the critical social determinants associated with health
Mhm.
and wellness and how we can play a role in supporting those initiatives. And so that list of 10 national programs with housing at the epicenter of everything that we do and realizing that ultimately it's about the 500 plus thousand affordable homes, meaning families are in those homes.
Mhm.
Families' lives will be changed and impacted. One thing that we talk about from my leadership standpoint is having the proverbial chair at the table, if you will. And that chair, no one's sitting in it, but it represents the communities that need us across the country. And so, as we're discussing the work that we're doing, the actions that need to take place, our obligation is to look at that chair and make sure that that work matches what's needed out there across our country.
Speaking of such, great segue into the next question. Thank you very much. Under your leadership, LISC has partnered with major organizations like Verizon, the NFL Foundation, and Lowe's, just to name a few. What makes a partnership truly effective in serving communities rather than simply taking the perspective of checking off a box?
Well, those three organizations are an excellent example: Verizon, NFL, and Lowe's. At the very top of the house, the leaders truly believe that um, without they truly believe in the impact and the value of economic development. And without there being public and private partnerships, it is very difficult to systemically change or reshape communities. I think in the examples that you use with those three leaders, as well as many, many of our other partners, we understand that the way that you also make a significant impact to the nation is that you improve the GDP opportunities from an economic standpoint. So while that addresses the financial ecosystem, but it also ties back to then how do you create healthy and whole communities that become part of your consumer base, that become part of your workforce base, that ultimately become part of help a strong tax base so that communities can be sustainable in a number of ways. It requires strong leaders that understand that the ecosystem all relies on public and private partnerships that have an affection and a commitment to improving the quality of lives for communities. And by doing so, it allows their businesses to thrive and for over many, many years to be sustainable.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, I love that you have taken a, let's call it a holistic approach, because you talk about bridging the gap across housing, small business, health, education, safety, and jobs. And those things are so important. As a leader, working at that intersection, as well as with finance, philanthropy, and policy, what barriers do you think one has to navigate that is often invisible to others, but still makes a large impact?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to look at this important question, Dr. Angela. I think the barriers that exist when we think about residents within the United States, we know that um, talent is somewhat fairly distributed. The universe, God gives us all what we need in many ways, but opportunity isn't fairly distributed. And so, where I see LISC playing an important role as a great convener is to contextualize the issue, attach faces and communities to that issue, and then engage public and private partners to help solve the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I think it is so important for us. And we've seen significant partnerships over our 45 plus years because there are so many that first of all understand part of what we just talked about, that if you don't invest in communities, then you know we ultimately hurt our ability as a country to continue to compete and to be a healthy nation. But we also have many people like myself that are examples that when there is someone and or when there are individuals as a whole taking time to invest and pour into them, great things can happen. And we pay it forward when, uh, in turn, we are supported. I believe that wholeheartedly about communities. Communities will pay it forward when they are
Mhm.
supported.
Agreed, agreed. And I think the key word there is definitely the support. You know, people want to know that you care about them. and they are willing to definitely pay that forward. I love how you said that. Now, in your travels, you may see communities that remind you of where you started and the various stages of your life's path. What do you hope people see when they too are able to have those reflection moments when it comes to leadership? How can they take it all in and use that as fuel?
Yeah, I think that for anyone that steps into a role that has leadership responsibilities, I think it's important to recognize that we should never take the title more serious than the work and the responsibility of uplifting communities, positively touching human lives. The moment we start taking the titles more serious or we get too attached to that, I think that's when we lose sight of the incredible opportunity that we have to truly make a difference. And so that's perhaps the most foundational thing that I would offer up. The other thing that I would say that, in response to your question, I hope that what people see from my journey is that I am sharing and passing on the lessons that I've learned. I hope that they can see the example of what purpose-driven confidence should look like. It is possible to live your life with a sense of humility, but still have a little bit of swag in terms of how you show up. Both
Mhm,
things can exist, and those things don't have to mean overly ambitious. They don't have to mean arrogant or any of those other labels that can sometimes become attached, especially if you're a person of color.
mhm. Now, I like to always give someone a sense of hope for the future. So I only have two more questions for you. The first one being, what excites you for the future? If you had to choose one or two words, let's say, what excites you about the future?
That's a tough question because there is so much that is uncertain at this time, and we don't
Yeah.
have enough time in this segment for us to get into that. You started off with saying that this is about enlighten, inspire, and empower, and so I'm going to
Mhm.
honor those three things. But what I
Mhm.
would say is that I am optimistic about the opportunities for organizations like LISC and for strong voices and advocates and community to continue being champions
Mhm.
focused on quality, affordable housing in our nation.
Mhm.
I think there's an incredible opportunity for us to address this crisis, of which some of the data is suggesting as a housing shortage of as much as 7 million that exist or will exist here in our nation. And we're seeing the issue becoming exacerbated from a quality and affordability standpoint, large part because of investor dominance that's buying up many
Mhm.
communities
Mhm.
and then making the housing stock unaffordable for everyday households that we know live from paycheck to paycheck. But I am confident that we can continue to solve this issue together if we keep our heads down, focused on communities and people first, and bring together our public and private partners to truly get aligned.
Mhm. Mhm. As part of our Black History series and the theme being Still We Rise, Still We Lead, what do you believe is this generation of leaders must carry? What should they carry forward to continue to not only be great leaders, but to be leaders of positive change?
Understand your history
Mhm.
and not just the history that you might find on social media or perhaps was taught in school. Do the research, truly understand the history of our nation, and understand the examples of those that have used their voice, used their energy for good. Be clear and resolved in terms of what that looks like when you use your voice and your energy for good, creating positive outcomes. Extend grace when at all possible. Be in a constant state of learning and get involved. If you are a young person today that rather than talk about the issues that exist, the things that you don't like, make sure you're voting. Make sure that you're showing up to city planning meetings and city council meetings when at all possible, and that you're playing a role in understanding what's going on in your communities from a zoning standpoint and supporting small businesses when you're making your purchases. Support, I'm going to double down on that. Support women and small businesses. Small businesses account for 42% of our nation's GDP. We as consumers should make sure that we are holding them up. And so we have an incredible opportunity with our young folks that they can reshape this world and make tremendous difference. But the
Mhm.
things that I've just outlined, I think are part of the secret sauce, that their steps to truly making that difference. Those are the steps that those that
Yeah.
came before me have taken, and certainly the ones that I've tried to mirror and demonstrate.
I couldn't agree with you more. We've had some really great role models. So it definitely made the road a little easier to walk. And I hope that our steps, our collective steps, are making it easier for the next generation as well.
Yeah.
Mr. Michael Pugh, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with me here today. I've enjoyed listening to your conversation. Now, before we leave, though, I want to make sure that everyone is aware if someone wants to reach out to you or follow you on socials, what is the best way to do that?
So check us out. The best way I would say is go to our website, LISC.org. That's LISC.org. It's an incredible way to learn a bit about who we are, what we do, and why it matters. You can also link to all of our socials from there.
Mhm. Thank you again for being a guest on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Thank you,
And,
Dr. Andrew.
mhm. And listeners, thank you for spending some time with us here today as well. You could have been anywhere and you chose to spend it with us today, and I thank you for doing so. As always, I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.